Monterey Park is home to one of the largest Asian American communities in the U.S. The city of 61,000 has been left stunned by the violence. With the community in mourning, the Monterey Park Lunar New Year celebrations have been cancelled. Businesses have been removing the red lanterns and festive banners that adorned the streets.
So this whole place is all the residents, all the merchandise is speaking Chinese, so a lot of native Chinese people will just gather here, including the dancing studio, which is tragic. Do you want me to? Was made by the owner of the dance studio, which he invited people there to celebrate New Year in the studio, $15 per person. The time was between 8:30 to 12:30, so it's like in the middle of the celebration.
Yeah, so the facilities here is comprised of different entities: Department of Mental Health, the FBI crisis team, and the City of Los Angeles Mayor's response team, along with the Red Cross, and they all provide different services, from comforting, from counseling. They're providing food services, and any other type of need that the family needs. They will be here until the situation has concluded, and providing services to whatever services they may need or request. The help is here. There's plenty of volunteers here that'll be able to help you, and they're willing to help from different vast of experiences, so they'll be able to assist in any way possible.
Well, for more on this latest mass shooting, let's turn to Arise U.S. correspondent Eric Ham, who is in Washington. Good to see you, Eric. Talk to us about what we know so far about this incident, about the gunman, and about a possible motive.
Yeah, Charles. Well, again, another horrific shooting taking place in the United States. And before we get into the details, let me just share that while we know that the United States has become known for these types of shootings, as awful as they are, this was not even the only mass shooting that took place yesterday. It just is, however, the one that has gotten the most attention. And one of the reasons for that is because the number of deaths. If we go to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, there was another mass shooting in a nightclub where at least 12 people were injured. Back to California, we know that this shooting took place on the Lunar New Year, where we now know that at least 10 people were killed, 10 injured. And what we know is that this individual is someone who actually frequented this dance hall where the shooting actually took place. And we know that he was also attempting to try to shoot up another place as well, where he was actually stopped by one of those individuals. We know that police officers believe that they have the suspect, the assailant, who died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound in a van that was stopped by police SWAT officers. Now, as far as a motive, at this time, we do not know what the motive is or why he attempted to carry out this violent act at this moment, at this time. But what we do know is that this was an individual, again, who used a semi-automatic weapon to kill a number of people. There are some who initially believed, of course, that this was motivated by hate because of the race, ethnicity of many of the victims. But again, we still don't have a clear motive to ascertain why, in fact, he carried out such a horrific and horrendous act.
And Eric, just following on from what you said at the outset, I'm reading here that there have been 23 days so far of 2023, but in the United States there have been 26 mass shootings so far this year, according to the organizations that track mass shootings. I wonder what's being made of that.
Yeah, that's right, Charles. Again, another very startling and equally horrific statistic is that now only 23 days in the year, and we've seen more mass shootings than actual days in this year. But Charles, it goes even deeper than that. In fact, what we know in the United States is that there is a pervasive gun culture throughout the country. In fact, Charles, there are more guns in America than there are people. In fact, there are 120 guns for every 100 people in the United States right now, which is why many believe that we're seeing such a proliferation of these types of shootings take place. Now, we do know that last year, because of the rise in mass shootings, that there was a gun legislation that did pass. Many believe that it did not go far enough. But what we did see is some gun legislation that actually passed. It got to the president's desk where he signed that legislation. The first time we have seen that in more than 30 years. But again, what we're continuing to see is it is not going far enough. And there are still those who are calling for a ban on assault weapons, such as those that was used yesterday in this mass shooting in California.
And Eric, whilst we're pondering those awful statistics that you just gave us, I wonder if I might get your update for us on those classified documents seized from President Biden's home. I wonder how significant it is that the FBI is now involved in searching Mr. Biden's residence. Does that indicate that it's gone to a more serious level?
Well, it doesn't indicate that it's gotten more serious. What we are now learning is, Charles, you're right. The Department of Justice searched President Biden's Delaware home on Friday for approximately 13 hours. And we're told that the president allowed the FBI into his home to search for additional classified documents, where we are told more classified documents were found. Now, again, it still does not rise to the level of criminality or criminal activity. What we're seeing now is it does, however, lead to more bad political press and PR for this administration, as evidenced by a number of Democrats who are expressing their displeasure and frustration with the drip of these documents continuing to be found at the president's residence and in his person. And so what we're seeing here is the special counsel is still underway. And of course, we know that right now it remains to be seen what is happening, because we're not hearing very much at all, if much at all, from the White House on these documents that continue to be found.
I mean, Eric, could it be that political aides haven't really got a clue what they're allowed to take where, and that lines are blurred in their minds? And is it also the case that the US government over-classifies documents?
Well, Charles, what we know is that President Biden, given that he has been someone who has had access to these documents for more than 40 years, it's not a question as to whether or not he should have these documents. I think the question is his handling of these documents, which have become a political problem for him, because we know one of the big calling cards that he ran on was his ability to be far more responsible than his predecessor. But right now, what we're seeing is that is not necessarily the case, given how these documents have been handled. Now, of course, we do not know if there's been a clean team that has come in to actually ascertain the vulnerability of these documents. And Charles, we don't know what's in these documents to actually ascertain the classification or the details, because we haven't gotten much information. And that is where you're seeing much of the frustration, particularly from the president's own party, about his handling of these documents.
Eric, thanks very much indeed. Eric Ham, Arise US correspondent, talking to me there from Washington.